All right, Dr. Cate Shanahan, welcome back to the show. This is part two for you because I love talking about vegetable oils and seed oils and the damage that they're causing down to the cellular level. And you've taken the last 4 years to write an amazing new book called Dark Calories. So first of all, thank you for your time and effort in fighting the good fight and really teasing out the research so people understand how these are implicating and causing damage to our bodies and our health, and for going upstream. Truly, you're like a salmon swimming as hard as you can upstream, fighting the good fight for all of us, and distilling down the research. And I really appreciate your time and effort, and I want to be a megaphone for you.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly, because yes, I do need all the help I can get because I'm fighting the American Heart Association, I'm fighting the healthcare industry, I'm fighting the food giants. It's just like, oh my God. And also now there's all the debunkers on social media out there volunteering to defend seed oils. Goodness gracious. Because they believe there's no evidence, right? They truly believe it. So we need to set the record straight.
We do. And you do that in your book, and we're going to do that on today's podcast. If you guys haven't listened to our first episode, that's episode 210, and we go into seed oils. But in today's episode, we are going to do that and go even deeper. We're going to talk about the connection to cellular damage, uncontrollable hunger, blood sugar levels, gut inflammation. We're even going to tease out something I think that is even more important, which people jump on the ketogenic diet. And we've seen the headlines that say the ketogenic diet is just as good as a high carbohydrate diet in helping people manage diabetes. But when you tease out the seed oils, we see a completely different story. And I want to dive deep into that too. So first up, can we talk about and give people a reminder, what are seed oils? Why are they in our food system? How did they even become something that are on our shelves?
Yeah, so I like talking about these oils. I've focused on these so much over the past few years because these are the reason everybody has a metabolic problem. If you're struggling with your weight, it's because of these oils and how they affect our body. And there's 8 of them. And nobody's put these pieces together, even though we've been eating so many of these oils, basically increasing them in almost perfect parallel with our obesity and diabetes epidemics. And they are, you ready? That's corn, canola, cottonseed, 3 C's and 3 S's. So soy, sunflower, safflower. That's 6 to memorize because those 6 are going to be on the ingredients labels. And there's 2 more that you don't have to really memorize. They're just mostly in restaurants and sit-down restaurants because they're more expensive and they have this like more healthy, fancy glow, but they're also garbage. So that's why there's 8 hateful 8. And yeah, they all have the same kind of damaging effects on your metabolism. They all are the root cause of all these metabolic problems that, doctors and medical science are scratching their heads about, prescribing Ozempic for, prescribing drugs to manage the other comorbidities, they call them, like hypertension or diabetes or heartburn. Even now we're understanding brain problems are partly related to metabolic disease. My understanding is that they are like 90% plus part related. So so it's very, very important to know what these are and to avoid them in order to protect your health.
And I want to make it very clear to the audience, we aren't saying it's the introduction of these oils and the calories that come with them that are causing the problem. It is how they are metabolized in the body and the toxic carcinogenic byproducts that come from that. And in your book, you point to research that suggests that a 5-ounce serving of French fries cooked in vegetable oil contains the same carcinogens as if you'd be smoking 20 to 25 cigarettes.
Yeah, that comes straight out of several publications that are peer-reviewed publications by a world-renowned toxicologist. The toxicologist studied toxins, so he knows what he's talking about. He uses some pretty high-tech equipment, and he's detected this category of toxin called alpha-beta unsaturated aldehydes. And it's long been known that those are responsible for most of the toxicity and carcinogenicity and just accelerated aging capacity of cigarette smoking and cigarette smoke. Smokers are exposing themselves to alpha beta unsaturated aldehydes. Well, gosh, it turns out that anyone eating restaurant fried food is also significantly exposing them to these carcinogens, and toxins. And it's a 1-to-1, like one French fry, it equals the toxicity of one cigarette. So you may not think you're a smoker, you may not think your children are smokers, but if you're eating fries, you are exposing yourself to these toxins, and they damage our metabolism in ways that medical science just does not even have any kind of a grasp on. And that's why I've been writing and trying to get this message out for 20 years, right? So I've been working on this book for 4 years, but I have other books, and they all talk about the harms of vegetable oils to differing degrees, because it's taken me decades to kind of unravel it all and make the connections that I've made so far. And I'm sure there's more.
Right. So let's talk about the mechanism or the toxic byproducts that come from it. Like, why, if they're coming from, say, I mean, I want to say sunflower, for example. People are eating sunflower seeds on the side of a baseball field. They're enjoying those sunflower seeds, and they're picking up their kids some organic crackers that are grain-free that say organic sunflower oil. Like, why would that be a problem, especially if it's, let's say, high oleic? Or talk to me about, the process of getting that out. I could imagine that, and I'm being devil's advocate here, that we would just press that sunflower and the oil would come out, and it would be added to our crackers.
Right. So if that were the case, if it were that easy to extract oil, that the crude oil is safe and edible, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. But that's not what happens. And so it's really all about the heat and pressure that damage the fatty acids that are naturally present in the sunflower seeds and the soybeans and the corn and the canola and so on, the other members of the Hateful Eight. So sunflower seeds are not toxic. They're not unhealthy. They're healthy, actually. They're part of a healthy diet. Don't live on them, right? But the same with soy. Soy can be part of a healthy diet. It has been in Asia for thousands of years, but they don't use soy oil there, or they didn't until the industrial era. And so the difference is really about the damage that occurs during the extraction, and the damage occurs in these oils as opposed to like refined coconut and refined palm and other oils that are refined. It occurs in these Hateful Eight because they are more fragile than coconut and avocado and the other oils that are refined and in the food supply, but they're not outright toxic. Mm-hmm. Any refined oil is not good. Right. Mm-hmm. I think that's one thing to keep in mind. Any refined oil is not as good as the virgin oil. Mm-hmm. We know this when it comes to olive oil, right? Mm-hmm. That's why we pay the big bucks for the extra virgin, which is better than virgin. And so it is the least refined oil that has the most health properties. If there were such a thing as a virgin sunflower oil, it wouldn't be toxic. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't be able to cook with it too much. That's a slightly different issue, but that is the key issue. The heat oxidizes the polyunsaturated fatty acids. And so coconut doesn't have any polyunsaturated fatty acids. So you can refine coconut oil, and a lot of people do because they want to get rid of that strong flavor. Mm-hmm. And be able to use it for other applications that aren't all about coconut flavor, right? And people refine peanut oil too to get rid of that strong peanutty flavor, and they refine avocado oil for the same reason. Also, it's cheaper. It's a lesser product and it's cheaper. So there's a lot of reasons that they refine the oil. But the thing is that refining oils that are very high in polyunsaturates and that were never refined, never even cultivated for oil is a whole different matter. So probably you noticed like sesame oil, I do recommend, right?
Right.
And sesame oil is high in polyunsaturates. So why do I recommend it? Well, for one thing, the oil in the food supply that you buy is sold in little tiny bottles and it's virgin. It's not called virgin, but it's called unrefined sesame oil.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's one big reason it's unrefined. The other big reason is that polyunsaturated fatty acids are released easily. You can just kind of squeeze it and the oil will start to come out. And that's because sesame seeds have specifically been bred for oil. And plants are so cooperative. We can breed them for so many things. They will do what we want, right? Like if we want a more sweet tomato, we just keep breeding it and we pick out the sweet ones. And next thing you know, you got a tomato that tastes really, really sweet. And the same with apples. There's like so many different breeds of apples, or there used to be. Some of them were extremely sour. They pucker your face. And some apples are extremely sweet and sugary, and beets and so on and so on. So the breeding history is so important because it's given sunflowers a little bit of a leg up, but not enough, right? Not enough that there's enough, flavor and oil. People just weren't using it long enough. But sesame seeds, on the other hand, people have been using those for thousands and thousands of years for the oil, and it's delicious and chock full of antioxidants, and it's a healthy oil. So maybe diving into a little bit of those details, I hope that was helpful.
That is so helpful. When I think about polyunsaturated fats in nuts and seeds, like I think about an almond and a cashew. And if you were to eat that nut in its whole form and it's chock full of vitamin E, and you looked at that polyunsaturated fat structure, like what does that structure look like versus these oxidized, like does the structure of the fat change, and does that cause the problems that we're dealing with? What does the oxidation of the fat really look like if you're trying to understand it, like I want to say like under a microscope?
Yes, well, it's understanding it actually at the atomic level. So it's even too small for a microscope. That's why it's taken it takes toxicologists with specialized, expensive equipment to understand what's going on. You can't just use a microscope. You have to look at the molecules. So what's happening with these molecules? So oxidation is a process where oxygen reacts with big molecules and turns them into little ones. Often in the process, it turns the big molecules into smaller toxic molecules, right? The smaller molecules were not created by nature on purpose, right? It's an oxidation reaction. These are spontaneous reactions between oxygen that are not mitigated by enzymes, not mitigated by biology. It's just sheer chemistry. It's sheer thermodynamics, not controlled. And that's the difference. So the polyunsaturated fatty acid is an intentionally designed molecule. It's got 18 carbons, 2 double bonds in a very specific place, a very specific shape. And we are cellular beings, and our biology runs on the shapes of molecules. So it's really kind of cool, I think, that, our biology runs on things that we can't even see, which are all just molecules, submicroscopic. We can't even see them with microscopes. But so to kind of make an analogy, any kind of a polyunsaturated fatty acid that before it's reacted with oxygen, let's just say it's like a water glass made of glass, perfectly safe, actually quite useful. You can drink water out of it. After it's reacted with oxygen, it's like you smashed it with a hammer. It's broken into all kinds of bits and pieces that are actually dangerous. And so it's a very good analogy, I think, because it's, those broken bits and pieces are just like glass shards. They can hurt you. They can hurt your cells, and they do.
And you really dive deep in the book into all the ways that it hurts you, from cellular damage, like we said, uncontrolled hunger, dysregulating blood sugar, gut inflammation, fat buildup, brain energy, and mental health issues. I want to dive into all of them, but I think it's best to start on the cellular level of what's happening there. What kind of cellular damage is happening and why?
So there's inflammation and degeneration, and the root of that is a chemical process called oxidative stress. So that's a chemical process, and it seems very abstract, but it's actually pretty easy to understand with some diagrams and some pictures. It's really just the process of oxygen reacting with these polyunsaturates. And then you get high energy molecules flying around inside your cells. And it's like having radiation fly around inside your cells, or bullets flying around inside, like tiny, tiny bullets just ricocheting off of your cell membranes and your proteins and your enzymes and breaking things. It's really very much like, a bull in a china shop kind of thing. When you have oxidative stress going on in your cells, nothing works right. And this disruption it sparks off inflammatory reactions. And that is the root cause of, if you have asthma, that's the root cause of your asthma attacks. And it's why you take anti-inflammatories like steroids to control asthma. It's also the root cause of, if you have really bad acne or other skin conditions like eczema or psoriasis, we treat all of these things with anti-inflammatory steroid-related medications that, because it's an inflammatory disease. And the root cause of those is this oxidative stress that just disrupts everything in the cell. So that's inflammation. You get gut inflammation, and it's the same thing. The oxidative stress from the direct contact with the toxins. In this case, it's directly what you just ate. Very often people notice that they, can't eat out without getting bloating and belly discomfort. Well, that's inflammation. That's because if you had French fries, that's going to be causing some inflammatory problems. And it can be so confusing because people will not know it's the oils, but they'll think, gosh, maybe, I had a pizza with my fries, maybe it was the cheese. Maybe I've got a problem with cheese, or I had, a pasta. And of course, that was like some sort of fried scampi with that, maybe, right? Deep fried. But their doctor will tell them, oh, no, it's probably the tomato, all the acid in the tomato that's causing your gastritis. Anything with an itis means inflammation. So if you have tendonitis, bursitis, cellulitis, there's inflammation going on. And we have an epidemic of these inflammatory diseases, but doctors don't know anything about what the vegetable oils and how they cause oxidative stress. So they're powerless to help you with anything other than drugs.
Right. So when I picture the cell itself and I think about your analogy of the glass being shattered, I'm picturing sort of like this dome where all of those glass shards are flying around and causing problems. And our body's natural response to that is to create inflammation, right? To create inflammation for healing. But if we're chronically being assaulted by these oils, we really aren't catching up. And that's when we start band-aiding with anti-inflammatories and things of that nature. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the reason that the body creates inflammation is because inflammation brings white blood cells, brings the immune system to the area, and it clots blood. And that's, inflammation is normally triggered by some kind of infection or some kind of a trauma, something that can make you bleed, or some foreign invaders. And so you want to activate the immune system and you want those white blood cells to come over. But if it's only just your cells that are suffering damage and there's no bacteria, then that's a problem, because your body's really not designed to handle that situation. It can't really calm down that inflammation as easily. And it's not going to calm it down until you've got more antioxidants in your body. That's the other arm of this problem, is that vegetable oils aren't just toxic, they also deplete your antioxidants because they promote so much oxidative stress, your body just can't keep up. And the normal systems in our body that control oxidation get depleted. And so we are just always experiencing inflammation that we can't, have a very hard time controlling it. And that's why people like just something like allergies, right? Allergies can go on for months. I don't know if you work with people who have seasonal allergies, but they can be plagued for months with sinus inflammation or lung inflammation and have to take asthma. And this inflammation can affect you in different parts of your body. And that maybe depends on genetics. We don't really know exactly. We can't really predict what disease someone's going to get from eating vegetable oils. That's why I call chapter 2 the all-you-can-eat buffet of chronic disease. It's just served up all these diseases, and it's kind of like it's not really your choice, but nature tells you what disease you're going to get. You won't know until you actually get it.
Right. And inflammation is that foundation in which chronic disease is diagnosed, right? So, what are you seeing? And can you talk more about the most prominent chronic diseases that you think can be reversed by removing vegetable oils from your diet?
So there's two types of chronic diseases: inflammatory, that we've been talking about, and then the whole other category we haven't really touched on is degenerative. Those
Mhm.
are diseases that are associated with aging, like
Amen.
arthritis, right? When your cartilage in your bones just gets depleted, or wrinkling even is kind of a degenerative disease. The collagen in your skin loses its elasticity. And so degenerative diseases are also accelerated by oxidative stress. So let's talk about examples. The most common examples of degenerative diseases, I would have to say these days, are arthritis. A lot of people are getting quite a lot of joint pains, and neurological problems. The nervous system, the brain, and our central nervous system, our peripheral nervous system, those are all very, very susceptible to oxidative stress. And dementia, various dementias, Alzheimer's, the dementia that people get if they've suffered repeated concussions,
Mhm.
those are due to oxidative stress oxidizing proteins in brain cells. And the oxidized proteins become like a sticky gunk that the cells can't get rid of.
Mhm.
And it just makes the cells like not function right, and accelerates the aging process of the cells. Nerve cells start to die back. People start getting symptoms of dementia when that happens.
So, when we're thinking about brain health and how vegetable oils can sort of disrupt brain energy and impact someone's mental health, I mean, dementia, I'm thinking about grandparents, and it's happening in younger and younger and younger people. We can see that it's becoming a major problem. But when we're talking about these gunky proteins in the brain, how are we able to prevent those by pulling the vegetable oils? And how are vegetable oils disrupting brain energy?
Yeah, so the brain energy issue is a yet another issue. So you can see why I keep writing books, right? There's so many things these do to us. I haven't really even touched on that, but that's more related to inflammation. The brain energy is more tied to inflammation, but the degeneration, that's from just the accelerated aging process. And how do vegetable oils do that? Well, it's the fact that they deplete antioxidants.
Mhm.
And so whenever oxidative stress occurs, which it always does, we're always exposed to a little bit of oxidative stress, because that's just part of life. In fact, it's oxidative stress that ultimately is the limit of our lifespan. It's because things just get oxidized and our body can no longer keep up and just loses its ability to replace and refresh new parts. That process is supposed to take somewhere around 100 years. Like if all goes really well, you're a lucky person, you don't get into too many accidents, not too many infections, not too much stress, all that. It's supposed to take 100 years for oxygen to cause these, diseases that eventually kill us. But vegetable oil accelerates that. Each toxin promotes oxidative stress and then depletes our antioxidants. So it's like a 1-2 punch of accelerated aging.
Right.
And it's not just some of these age-related diseases. It's even things like Lou Gehrig's disease, and other multiple sclerosis, which isn't necessarily thought of as age-related, right? But they're all degenerative and inflammatory, right? But the
Mhm.
root cause is oxidative stress. So in some sense, it doesn't maybe matter exactly how it all happens. That I do write it all out in the book, but the key thing is that it's impossible to fend off oxidative stress when your diet is full of vegetable oils and your body's antioxidant enzyme systems are depleted. You have to replete them. So you can quit vegetable oils, and that's absolutely key. But you also have to eat a diet that's going to rapidly replete those antioxidant enzyme systems. And I teach how to do that too, of course, and indoor calories. But when you do that, the difference, I guess it is important to understand the difference between a degenerative disease and an inflammatory disease, because the inflammatory diseases can reverse like completely.
Right.
Whereas degeneration is kind of like, well, okay, anything that's fully degenerated, maybe not gonna, like if you're lost all the cartilage in your hip joint, reducing inflammation can reduce the pain, but it's not likely to bring the cartilage back. But I mean, as I'm saying that, I'm thinking of a couple people who have told me that they thought that their doctor said their x-rays looked better. So, maybe it wasn't completely, cartilage wasn't completely gone, but it's harder. The regenerative part is less of a guarantee. The calming inflammation part, that I can guarantee.
And how does calming inflammation increase brain energy? So we're pulling out the vegetable oils, and we want better mental health. We want more brain energy. What is actually happening? Is it the utilization of energy substrates that are getting to the brain? Is it, like, you tell me?
It's the process of generating energy, because generating energy happens in these little chambers called mitochondria. And these little chambers called mitochondria, they need oxygen. That's why we breathe, because these little fellers, they use oxygen to break bonds and create ATP, which is kind of like a little cellular battery source. It makes all of our enzymes function and go. So mitochondria use oxygen to create energy for our cells. But if our diets have depleted our cells of antioxidants, then the mitochondria can't control oxygen anymore. And that it turns mitochondria into a source of oxidative stress. That means that not only, so it's a doubly bad thing, because your cells are having a hard time generating energy because they need to control oxygen to do that, and they don't have the antioxidants to do that. And at the same time, the lack of antioxidants is making mitochondria shoot out more free radicals and create more oxidative stress. So the poor brain cells are really struggling to get energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why so many people do so much better when they stop eating vegetable oils, whether they have anxiety or depression or PTSD or even serious disorders like bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. I mean, people have gotten off medications. People have gotten out of hospitals. It's incredible, the transformations that getting off these oils and eating a healthy diet that repletes your antioxidant. It's incredible what it can do. And
Really,
right.
sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say it's really exciting. I mean, just all that's been coming out. I mean, you've been beating this drum for a long time, but I have had Dr. Palmer on the podcast, and I just taped with Dr. Eid. These are metabolic and nutritional psychiatrists that are focused on brain health and mood, and they're taking it back to nutrition and being able to pull people off drugs. And what I think you do such a great job of is really pointing the finger at vegetable oils, because a lot of people really do focus on, oh, I'm going to do the paleo diet, autoimmune,
Right.
I'm going to do the ketogenic diet. I'm going to, you just said focus on antioxidants. And what people hear, I think most of the time, and working in clinical practice for over a decade, is they think that means more blueberries, or that just means more greens, or that, and they're really not focused on animal proteins, or as a source of proteins to help your body's endogenous antioxidants system. So can you talk
Yeah.
about a little bit further, and then we'll dive deeper into some of the research that you found from chapter 8 around the ketogenic diet specifically? Like,
Yeah,
what
I'm so glad yes, definitely. I want to talk about that. But I'm so glad that doctors like Dr. Palmer and Dr. Georgia Eid are utilizing, are now aware that vegetable oils are, this is what I wanted when I wrote books when I wrote Deep Nutrition, I had the second edition of Deep Nutrition had a whole chapter on how vegetable oils destroy our brain. So, or basically, I make vegetable oils are the brain's worst enemy. I call the chapter's called Brain Killer. So, like, I've been wanting for years for doctors to adopt these principles. The only thing missing from this conversation now is that the clarity that vegetable oils are the brain's worst enemy, right? Because folks are talking about, they're like kind of a little scattered right now. This is sort of a new phase that psychiatry is entering, where they understand the link between metabolism, energy, brain cell energy, and brain cell function. They finally made that leap, which is such an important and profound leap. But that it's driven by oxidative stress is a little bit muddy right now. And so hopefully the more that, we talk about this, and the more people understand about dark calories and what the message in there is, the more clarity people will get, because then they don't have to worry about, oh, okay, do I need to follow specifically a keto diet, or is it a carnivore diet, or what kind of diet, or I don't really like meat. Can I just be a vegetarian and have any chance of being healthy? Right. And so once you understand that the issue is oxidative stress and you want to learn how to control it, then you can answer all those questions. And the answer to all those questions is yes, all these diets can work. I'm not sure, vegan is a little hard, but vegetarian certainly can because of eggs and the dairy. So let's get to your question about the endogenous antioxidants. What does that even mean? That means antioxidants that your body manufactured from scratch, right? Blueberries make the antioxidants in blueberries, and those antioxidants are beneficial to the blueberry. They're designed to help the blueberry. They're not designed to help the you and the me, right? We're different organisms. So those kind of antioxidants do play a role in fighting oxidation in our gut. And even when we're cooking, say olive oil, it has antioxidants, right? The phytosterols that are protecting the olive oil while you're cooking, they help protect the olive oil. They reduce toxicity. So it's important there, but they are useless to our body. So when we eat the phytosterols and resveratrol and all these other things that are sold as antioxidant supplements, well, now it's a job for our liver and our kidneys to get rid of them and detoxify them, because they have no use in the body. So they just get eliminated. We want to support the endogenous. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So if we're not able to use, and I do want to push back and ask the question though, what about the science that's showing, for example, that polyphenols, when we eat polyphenol rich foods, that our microbes produce a bioavailable antioxidant that crosses the gut epithelial lining and then supports our body? Like, how do you feel about that sort of newer science coming out and the synergistic effects between plant-based antioxidants, our microbes, and what's available to us?
Well, it's true that if we have a healthier microbiome, they can produce more of the vitamins that they've been trying to produce for us, right? Like vitamin B, the various B vitamins, B12 is produced by our guts, right? If we don't get it in our diet, if we have healthy gut flora, we can get it from them. Right. And so there's definitely synergy between healthy gut flora and fighting oxidation, but it's not the weird compounds. It's not the compounds that help just bacteria. It's mostly vitamins, like straight up vitamins. Not anything that we need to worry about supplementing, except for vitamins. I actually do recommend supplementing vitamins.
Yeah.
To cover your bases.
Right. A little foundation of nutrition to make sure you're not suboptimal. So
Right.
So let's get back to endogenous antioxidants and how to build those up.
Yeah. So what are they? Yeah, a great question. So it's a network of interconnected, intercooperative molecules, because oxidation occurs at all different energy levels. And like this gets into quantum physics, where you're talking about different spin states, like subatomic, different spin states, right? So you need to have different antioxidants for different types of free radicals. And there's many different types of free radicals. So hydrogen oxygen can exist in a form called superoxide. That's one energy level. And there's another form called hydroxide. That's another one. And then hydrogen peroxide. That's another one. We need different antioxidants for all of those. And our body's got enzymes for all of those, like enzyme solutions for all of your antioxidant needs. But they have to be built from scratch. And all of these enzymes do require minerals. And they very often cooperate with each other, which means you basically need to have all of the minerals and all of the vitamins for any of them to work well.
Mm-hmm.
So our bodies make them from protein. I didn't mention that part. Protein, that's like the enzymes are made out of protein. And so we need to have a pretty good, base of protein in our diet too.
Which is so interesting because when people think of an anti-inflammatory diet, I think the first thing we think that we've been taught to think about, if you aren't deep in the nutrition, pun intended, is to think, oh, anti-inflammatory diet, I'll have a plant-based, colorful diet, not a lot of, condiment meat in air quotes, and they're not focused on oils at all. When in reality, what you've been teaching for so many years through all of your books and dive back into in Dark Calories is pulling out what is the biggest cause of inflammation, which are the hateful eight, and focusing on those 6 you can remember, the 3 C's, the 3 S's, and repleting what your body needs to fight this oxidative stress, which requires protein and all of the vitamins and minerals, or at least a base layer of that. So if we're decreasing inflammation and we're upping our getting enough protein and getting our vitamins and minerals, what would happen on a cellular level to prevent chronic disease?
So what would happen is, once we start improving our diet, that's what you're asking about, like what's going to happen on the cellular level. So we're going to be able to more easily generate energy. That's kind of like lots of good things happen, but that's probably the first thing that you'll notice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's generating energy is so important for our brain that you can tell when you're having just the slightest little dip, because you feel what's called hypoglycemic, meaning like your blood sugar is low or too low, or like your blood sugar is dropping.
Mm-hmm.
And we call it hypoglycemic, focusing on the sugar, because the brain generally uses more sugar than any other organ in the body. And so very often when our blood sugar level dips just a little bit, the brain is going to be the first organ to malfunction. And it'll malfunction in ways that we feel. And one of the most common things now that people are feeling and talking about and don't realize this is a sign of brain malfunction is being hangry.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is, what is hangry? It's being angry, right? Being irritable. What's happening is that your brain cells are not getting enough energy and they're malfunctioning. And your body is in a state of stress, because when your blood sugar starts to drop, there's a certain area of your brain, the ventromedial hypothalamus, that sends a signal through the vagus nerve to your adrenal glands, and they start shooting out cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
What is that for? Because the cortisol can raise your blood sugar a little bit, and then it gets the energy to the brain. But that's not how you're supposed to get energy to your brain. You're supposed to get energy to your brain between meals from your own body fat. But the tragedy is that when our diets have been loaded with all these vegetable oils, it's very difficult for our mitochondria to control oxygen when we're burning our body fat. Our body fat has too much polyunsaturated in it. The mitochondria don't have enough antioxidants. So what happens? Our cells need sugar instead. It's kind of a backup fuel. And so that's why science is showing that people who are diabetic are in a heightened state of adrenal stress. They've got more cortisol in their body than normal, and they're also not burning their body fat very much at all between meals. So they're constantly hungry. I mean, it's really a terrifically unhealthy state, but it's also terrifically easy to see what's really going on now that I've been studying this for so many years and explain it, like so many people are saying this makes sense because nothing else can put all these different pieces together. And now let's get to what we were talking about why the keto diet doesn't always work.
Well, I want to just interject here because what you're talking about when you want to burn your own fat for fuel is when you're burning fat, your body is releasing ketones and that becomes the brain energy. And people who can successfully get onto a ketogenic diet and their brain can use those ketones as fuel, you feel whip smart. You feel like there is no end to the energy your brain has. And it is a great feeling for most people who can transition successfully and find that or be metabolically flexible and know what that feels like. It's a great feeling. But what we're seeing in some of the literature, which we kind of touched on, is that we're not seeing a difference between the ketogenic diet and, sort of, I don't want to say the sad American diet, but other forms of diets for diabetes and for this specific subset of people with such bad insulin resistance. So what is happening? And can you kind of tease out and clarify for us why this headline even existed?
Yeah. So the thing is that the keto diet doesn't work any better than a high carb diet for reversing diabetes when the dietitians who tell people what to eat are keeping people away from saturated fats and therefore basically forcing them to eat more vegetable oil, like lots of it, right? Because the keto diet is a high fat diet. And so if you're telling people to eat more fats and a lot of these fats are going to be coming from vegetable oil, you're promoting more oxidative stress.
Right.
And oxidative stress is the root cause of all metabolic disease too, right? Like we talked about how it's the root cause of inflammation, but it's also the root cause of insulin resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And so insulin resistance drives diabetes. You got to reverse your insulin resistance to improve your blood sugar control.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take away carbohydrates, you can control the spikes, right? Because you're not eating food that spikes your blood sugar. But the crazy thing is you're not improving your baseline need. And when you're a type 2 diabetic, your fasting blood sugars are often really high. They're often higher, like a normal fasting blood sugar for a healthy person should be under 90. But when you're a type 2 diabetic, it's very rare that you get down that low. And if you do, you often feel just horrible. Like, especially if you're a type 2 diabetic and your blood sugar fluctuates a lot and you're not, what they call well controlled. Not that it's your fault. It's the doctor who doesn't know what causes type 2 diabetes. It's his fault. So the baseline need for blood sugar is elevated by insulin resistance. And this is my energy model of insulin resistance. And this is why I'm saying that there's stuff in this book that will help make sense of your life experience. And if you're a health professional like you, Kelly, it'll help make sense of your experience with patients, because we've not just been looking at the root cause. And the root cause relates to oxidative stress, which relates to energy. So I call my theory of what's the root cause of insulin resistance, I call it the energy model of insulin resistance, because our cells need to be able to generate energy from fat in order for us to be healthy. And it has to be really from our body fat. And in order to do that, we have to have more antioxidants in the system around the mitochondria to protect them from the oxidative stress that always happens when our little mitochondria are working with oxygen to give us energy. And the keto diets do that when you take away vegetable oils and replace it with all those high protein foods and all the nice meats and nutrient rich vegetables and some of the nuts and seeds that have lots of minerals and can be very healthy too. So the keto diet does that. But if you don't encourage people to eat foods that have these stable saturated monounsaturated fats, like the cheeses and the burgers with the 70% lean and 30% fat, that kind of thing, that's a good keto diet. That's going to help you reverse your diabetes. And that's what the research shows. And I dive into this, all the details in it, in chapter 8 of Direct Calories. Yeah, where I talk about what the keto diet, why it doesn't work sometimes. It's not about the ketones. That's really the bottom line. It's about energy.
Well, it's so fascinating to me because when you think about someone who has, has vegetable oils in their diet, also relying on glucose as their source of energy, I'm picturing the cell that doesn't have the antioxidants to keep the inflammation down in the cell, but then is constantly needing to burn sugar to have energy. And when those dips of energy happen, or the brain feels like it's malfunctioning, or you feel that call from the vagus nerve, like, go get some food right now, you're hangry, you're reaching for those carbohydrates. And I know through working with clients that even when I can bring someone's blood sugar down, it is such a lag with the insulin. Insulin can be hanging out and high, and they're starving, but they're also not able to free fats in their body to even be burned for fuel, let alone, it's like there's so many hurdles along the process of getting clean energy in your brain or in your cells all over your body to form and function correctly.
Right. And so that's why the way that I solve this problem for people is help them recognize their energy dips better and build meals that sustain that energy between meals, thus preventing the energy dips. And that means, how does it do that? How do the meals do that? Because they provide plenty of healthy, stable fats, which come out of our digestive system slowly. And while our brains can't use those fats because they're just too big to get through the blood-brain barrier, the other cells of our body can.
Mhm.
And that saves the little bit of glucose for the brain. Meanwhile, I also recommend what I call slow digesting carbohydrates that come from, vegetables that are semi-starchy, like broccoli's got some carbohydrates, garden peas have some carbohydrates, nuts have carbohydrates, right? And so those come out of the bloodstream slowly too. And it's like a slow drip of sugar into the bloodstream, providing your brain with just a little bit of energy. And so the key thing is, Kelly, and this is a hard pill for some people to swallow, it's more important to get your energy levels stable than it is to lose weight. And so, and that's like, it's just people don't want to hear that. They want to just lose the weight. And I'm telling you that this will help you lose weight because you will stop snacking so much, right? The reason that you ultimately, most people fail is because they fall off the wagon and then they just go back to old habits because they just needed that energy. It's an energy problem. It's not a willpower problem that makes most people fail because they were struggling against not having enough brain energy. And there's only so much willpower anybody has in the system. And eventually they run out and give in and they fall off the diet. So we got to get you the energy to have the will to eat, to make these meals that are healthy. That's how you're going to use your willpower to make healthy meals. And don't obsess about losing weight because the weight loss isn't what makes you healthy, right? Like I think a lot of people assume that the weight loss will immediately make them healthy. Right? Because doctors tell them things like this, like, well, your weight's a little bit up, as if that's the whole problem.
Right.
Right.
That's so frustrating for me to hear. And I mean, I just take it all the way back to 2012, 2011, when I was first seeing clients and all I wanted them to do was plate up and break their fast whenever that was for them with a meal that actually would regulate hunger hormones, that had the proteins, the fats, the fiber and the greens, the color, whatever it is, to keep them full and satisfied, but in that order. And to lean on those things because I didn't want them snacking, because it's so much easier to eat a full meal, a plate of food that provides enough essential amino acids and fatty acids and, whatever vegetables you like to enjoy or whatever you like, that would slow that digestion, elongate that blood sugar curve so that you aren't spiking fast and crashing hard. Because I can't get anywhere if you're restricting calories or sticking to something that is such a small meal that it's a fast spike and a hard crash. Like there's not much we can do with that. You're not going to white knuckle your way through that for the rest of your life.
Exactly. I mean, it's just you're inviting blood sugar swings. I mean, that swings. That is some of the worst advice, to eat frequent small meals. That just makes, research shows that just makes people eat more calories. They feel more hungry more often when they eat frequent small meals. So it's so pervasive, that advice, and athletes especially hear it. You're always told you have to eat something before you work out.
Mhm.
That's crazy. That's terrible advice. But yeah, so like you're supposed to be able to get energy from your body fat. And the fact that you're insulin resistant means that you're not getting energy properly from your body fat. And so it's a multi-pronged approach to restore all of those many systems that we've been talking about that are broken. And that multi-pronged approach comes mostly from food, like 95%, right? Obviously, you have to sleep. You want to be active, as active as you can be. If there's exercises you enjoy, minimize your emotional stress. All of that stuff's so important. But really, we ate our way into this problem, and we have to eat our way out of it.
Mm-hmm. 110%. And what's so amazing is that we can take all of the things we've talked about, whether it's cellular damage, blood sugar issues, disrupted brain energy, and we can tie it back to a very simple type of a diet that can truly support all of these systems without feeling overwhelmed by the process of getting there. So, what are the best steps for someone to do just that? To get what they need to balance their blood sugar, to get all of those amino acids, minerals, and vitamins their body needs to, fight oxidative stress. Clearly, real easy for people to remember to remove those hateful eight. But what does day in the life look like? What do meals look like? How are we eating to do just that?
So 3 meals is where I start with people. Like, a lot of people want to fast because they've heard all these things about fasting. But fasting, really, that research shows that, the bulk of the benefit there is just that people don't have to count calories and they end up, naturally eating a little bit less. I advocate also for eating less frequently for the same reason. It's an extension of the not eating too often, right? So I personally only eat twice a day. But if you're metabolically like damaged, you may not feel well going 8, 9, 10 hours during the waking hours without eating at all. And I just don't, ask people to do that right out of the gate.
Mhm.
I do tell people, like, eventually you might feel better just eating 2 meals a day, just because it makes life easier. It makes, like, we spend less time digesting, we spend less time having to think about food. 3 meals, 2 meals, fine. 1 meal, fine. Skip a meal. Skip eating for one day every couple of weeks. It's fine too, if you want to do that. But I want people to realize that fasting is not this miracle. I don't think fasting is like some inherent miracle. Somehow it's going to make your body control oxidative stress. No, it's not. Actually, you need nutrients to do that. So if you're just fasting and you haven't improved your nutrition, I'm not sure that's going to be good. Honestly, I think it could be bad because you might start burning more muscle and losing muscle mass and bone mass, and serious organ like volume goes down, right? When people go on crash diets, people lose kidney mass. I mean, that's got to be bad.
Right.
Losing kidney volume.
I mean, it kind of takes me back at least a decade when juice fasting was all the rage, and I would sit there and go, I mean, phase 1, phase 2 liver detoxification needs protein. Like, what
Right.
what are we doing? Okay.
Yeah.
Th-
And, it comes down to thinking that being overweight is metabolic disease and being a normal weight is metabolic health. But no, being able to control preventing oxidative stress, that's metabolic health.
and you tell us how to do that in dark calories. And I want everyone to go buy it. I could talk to you forever. Dr. Cate, thank you for being here for part 2. This was so informative. And it is also a really great reminder for me because things creep. you're going to restaurants more often. I love my husband. He has an Instagram called Be Bad by Chris, which he does not post on, but he loves fried food. And I fight and fight and fight. And then there's not much fight left in me. And, those habits can infiltrate the whole family, including my children. And so these are always, always, always good reminders of the science of what's really happening. I'm not going to forget that glass being smashed with a hammer, the shards everywhere, the inflammation that ensues. I'm not going to be afraid of it. I'm not going to be so fearful that I have a complex around having a dinner out with my family, but I am going to get a lot more serious around the frequency of these oils and the allowance, because our health is everything. Our health is everything. My kids'
Absolutely.
health is everything. I think about, was I in contact with these oils as a kid? Like, I do remember my mom using Crisco and having vegetable oil in a large plastic container from Costco to make her own Mexican tortilla chips. But it's like, to really get serious again, we always should be taking this science as motivation to just tighten down the screws and to get serious again for our own health and for the benefit of our families. So thank you for sparking that fire inside of me again, to go back and to really take another look at our pantry, at our life, and to know that this is a serious issue that's not going away, and we need to beat our drum behind you. So thank you for being here again, for writing the book Dark Calories. Where can people get the book? Where can they follow along? Where can they learn more?
So you can get the book from Amazon and pretty much anywhere. It's available on hardback and downloadable and Audible. So you can listen to it while you're traveling and schlepping your kids around if you do a lot of that. If you want them, I was going to say if you want them to fall asleep, but if they're really little, I bet that's what will happen. But if they're actually, I had a seventh grader tell me she wanted to present, information from the book to her class. So I was like, wow, that's one of the best reviews I've ever had. So, but please visit my website, which is drcate.com, drcate.com, and scroll down to the bottom to sign up for my newsletter, because that's where you'll find out like what I've been up to lately, and other projects. And when you sign up for my newsletter, you get a lot of tools that are useful little downloads to help like make this, the practicalities of this more concrete. And, people say they really are helpful. So I'm also on Twitter at Dr. Cate Shanahan, DRCATE, Shanahan, the last name, as well as LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook under the same handle. And thank you so much, Kelly. This has been a really, I think, a fun conversation, because you're just like so bringing up really good points every time I say anything. That's great. And your questions are great.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I say like a forever student and continually curious, and mostly love motivating my community and myself to make changes and continue, like I said, to just reevaluate and regroup and refocus. I never think about it like starting over, but I think about it as, how fast can I get back up if I've fallen, right? Or tripped, or, it's like the shortening the distance of that is always what makes the balance better. And so that's my goal with this podcast, as always. And I love that you came back. So thank you again for your time. And I'm excited to get this one out into the world.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to it.
Okay.
Thanks, you too.